You ready?
Ready?
What day is it? The 4th, ain't it?
4th.
Good morning. I'm David Daniel with the Centreville Press, and thank you for joining us on a interview here with our Centreville Mayor, Mr. Mike Oakley. Thank you, Mike, for being here.
Glad to be here.
Today is February the 4th, and it's about 10:30 or so, something like that. And Mike is joining us so that we can talk about one of the projects that we're working on now with the Centreville Press, and that is doing reports for the public on the COVID money that has come into our county and the different things and the different plans that may be made or used with these COVID funds. So the mayor's here to address that, but I want to tell you, Mike, I really appreciate you and your dad with all the advice and help that I've had in being the publisher of the Centreville Press. I asked your dad not too long ago, I said, Jim, I'd love to ask you a question. He said, what is it? I said, can you give me any advice on being the publisher of the press? Can you give me anything that I might need to know? He said, keep the doors open.
No doubt.
That's pretty good advice.
Pretty good advice.
Pretty good advice. Well, I appreciate y'all, and I appreciate you being here today. I know that we were going to address some specific questions about the COVID funds, but I also want to give you an opportunity, just a moment, to tell people what you may want to say and anything that the city may want to convey to the public. So I'd like for you to have the floor and just tell us about what's going on at the city of Centreville.
One advantage of that I think I brought to the table is that I've lived away in different places and I got to see how they look, how they operate, how they present themselves to visitors. And then being from here, oftentimes it's not turning a blind eye, but we see the same thing, be it a dilapidated house or a business that's been let be empty for years, and we just kind of forget that it's there. Other people come in, that's the first thing they see. And so my main goal was to clean up Centreville and make it ready. Some of the term now is shovel-ready projects, but make us shovel-ready for people to come in and get a positive attitude and impression right off the bat. And then we can work on economic development, getting people to put in housing developments and work on the infrastructure that's so important to a small town.
Well, I appreciate that. I know I have gotten some reporting that's coming into me of some of the folks up in the Woodstock area that are doing a great job of getting together and doing some road cleanup.
Yep.
That's a similar thing to what I think you're talking about.
Very similar.
I think Bibb County, somebody told me I think yesterday it was, they said that Bibb County is ranked the worst.
I've heard that.
In the state for trashy roads.
And that's a reflection on our character.
That is.
We want people to come in and have a good,
absolutely.
Good image.
Well, there's some folks up in the north end, and there's other folks too.
Right.
I know of other folks that are out there trying to improve that. So, and I'm hoping that we can come up with some community-wide ways that we can try to deal with that in an effective way. Because when the leaves go off the trees and the grass turns brown, it looks like a garbage dump up and down our roads. It's terrible. So I'm glad to see some people that are doing something about that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about what's happening with the city or any future plans?
A couple of things we're working on, future plans, is I don't know if you've been to different states, and they'll have wildflowers in their median. We've got a great median, with a new bypass out 82. And I just thought it would be so neat to have wildflowers from our city limits to Brent city limits and coming up 82. And we've got to go ahead from DOT, and we've got some great folks with ALDOT that are working, with us and on signage and different things we're planning. We just got to get together. And one of the main things I wanted to do too was form a citizens advisory group, and COVID kind of put that on the back burner because
I remember you
people are
mentioning
very
that
hesitant, about getting together, but we're getting better about that now.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, let us know. And who knows who has the best suggestion that we may act on to improve, a place where we live, worship, raise families.
That's what it's all about, is community.
Bottom line.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking the time to come over here today. This will be our second report. Mayor Bobby White met with us last week, and we've had that report done, and she gave us an update on what her city was doing, and also on what they understand at this moment in time about how to manage and handle the COVID funds that have been put into these communities over the past 2 to 3 years, I guess, roughly. And there's a lot of different funds, and the federal government has a lot of different things. So our cities, I think, are trying to be cautious in how they approach the spending of these COVID funds. And I know Mayor White mentioned that, but I wanted to ask you now.
Let me tell you this first.
Sure, go ahead.
A couple of things that we've been put into action. We applied for and were accepted. We're the smallest town to be accepted in the League of Municipalities Economic Development Academy. And me, Mike Nichols, and Don Mack have gone to the first iteration, and there'll be 3 more each quarter at a different junior college throughout the state. And the information you get is vital to what we're trying to do to get people to come in, and it has to do with Main Street to clean up your, it doesn't have to be a street. It can be a city block. It could be in Court Square, and different grant applications and grant writers that are available to do stuff like that. We also applied for a grant through West Alabama Planning that Dennis Stripling, hometown boy and former Brent mayor, we got accepted into the Retail Academy. And that was fascinating. It was a 2-day intense, not economic development, but retail recruiting and retail development. And, it tells you what you're lacking and what you need and who you can go to get to, who you can go for information, which nowadays in this digital age, it's not exactly what you know, it's who you know or where to go to get it. And those are big things that we've got coming on the horizon. And I'm jokingly and seriously said, at this point, I'm information rich and resource poor. I said, I've got everything I need to turn this place on its head in a good way. And I don't have the resources or the money to put a lot of those into action. That kind of deal.
Well, I know there's always the struggle that with the funds that you send to Washington and that then always come back with stipulations on what you can do with it.
Always. With
the result being you don't get to do what you'd prefer to do, and you and our local leaders have a better handle on what needs to be done a lot of times than our folks up in Washington. Well, let me go right on into talking about the COVID funds that have come into our communities. And I did mention this to Mayor White also, but there's a significant difference between what the city of Brent has received so far, and there may be more coming, I know that, and the cities of Centreville, West Block, and Woodstock. Do you know why there's such a significant difference?
They count, in the U.S. Census, they count prisons as population.
I thought that was probably what it was.
ARPA, they call it ARPA, American Rescue Funds, is based on population, so they get a bonus for having a prison.
Well, so the prison population is counted in with the total population of Brent.
Absolutely.
Is that right? Well, it makes a difference,
It does. Makes a big difference.
If we lose our prison over there, it's going to make a difference.
It'll make a terrible difference, really.
Yeah.
So we're doing all we can as a group. Now, Bobby White and I work together a lot. We talk to each other at least twice a week, and about things like, what do you need that we can help you with? What do I need? I think we've gotten on board with. We've more or less, and I won't say combined, but when they call out when we have a fire in Centreville, Brent's alerted. When we have a fire in Brent, we're alerted. And oftentimes we serve as each other's backup because of we're both volunteer fire departments. We have a relative lack of equipment. We can handle most of what we're faced with, but we're not a Tuscaloosa or even a Vance, where Mercedes has helped Vance. And so we really back each other up. Our police force, when we get a call in Centreville, Brent's notified. When we call in Brent, we're notified. So we work really hand in hand. And probably 3 or 4 days a week, me, our police chief, and the Brent police chief, Terry Nichols, meet and just talk about what's going on. And Mike Nichols is the mayor pro tem. And he's of course, former police chief, former coroner, well-versed in the first responder world. And he's usually there, too, to add expertise that you cannot buy with his years of service.
Well, the people in this community should be very grateful for the cooperation that occurs between our cities, because I think we have a little safer place to live
Absolutely.
and a better place to live because of that cooperation. So I'm very thankful for that.
Well, we share commonality, we share schools, we share.
Well, we're one community.
We're really
We happen to be two cities.
We do share a lagoon. I don't know if many people know about our
well,
lagoon.
It was in the article that we did, that Mike did.
Yeah, I saw that. Good article.
Yeah, it's a good article. And he done a good job.
And you would not believe how much goes into a lagoon and then sharing a lagoon. But we're lucky that we've got David Tucker, he's the lagoon master, for lack of a better term. And of course, that would be a story unto itself to get David in and talk about what goes on into running and maintaining a lagoon. It would blow your mind. Pretty good story.
That's a good recommend. I'm gonna try to keep that.
It'd be a good story because it's vitally important.
Let me get into the COVID funds, because that's the purpose of this particular report and this particular article series that we're doing here at the press. So this is number 2 in our reporting. We hope to get at least 5. There may be even more. So let me ask you, as the city of Centreville, in the last 3 years, has your community received any COVID relief funds? Now we know we do. From any of the programs above, and you've already seen the list, how much funding has the city of Brant received?
Centreville.
So, yeah,
we got. It was last year, and now there are different. This is the confusing thing. There are different pots of funds coming in. There's COVID relief, which really started 2 years ago, and then last year they come up with the American Rescue Plan funding, and they call it ARPA. And so we got the first installment last July, I think it was, of $309,000.
309.
Yeah, this June or July, we will receive another 300, the exact same amount. And you know, we had to create, as everybody does, we had to create a separate account. And our city clerk, Megan Batt, has done a phenomenal job of, and this is going on all over the state, all over the country, I guess, of reaching out to other city clerks. And I talked to other mayors at our West Alabama Mayors Association. What are you doing? What are you thinking about doing? What have you heard that we can spend these on? Because this money was allocated with very little guidance. In fact, 3 months ago, the director of ADECA, who's a great friend of ours and a former mayor of Enterprise, got up on stage at a league meeting and said, "I'll be honest, you know as much about the guidelines to spending these ARPA funds as I do." So that told us a lot. With the federal government, as you said, there's always strings attached. The fear of everybody is being, what if we've got needs that we've identified, everybody does. What if we spend this money? And the distrust in our federal government, especially right now, is that they'll go, "You forgot to dot this I or cross this T, and so you're going to have to give us back that $309,000 with no ability to give $309,000 back." This is kind of like we've been dealing with, I jokingly, former Mayor Terry Morton, he said, "Oh, everything is going to be smooth sailing." Well, I got in office, we had 2 major fires and a tornado, and a loan, and a USDA loan that had not been finalized. And so it was a helter-skelter type period, and it was not smooth sailing. But the tornado has really opened our eyes and everybody's eyes, and thank goodness for Kirk Smith, our EMA director for the county, who's done a great job. The tornado kicked in a need for different funding to help not only homeowners but landowners, and ALDOT was a great partner in that process because it tore up roads, and the Alabama Power Company, their infrastructure was devastated. And when they come in, it's like an army on a mission coming in. Anyway, our calls to FEMA, the first call, not only was she not from Alabama, she was from the Northeast, and the terminology that FEMA uses, and I've been in the military for almost 40 years, which is acronym Hades. And I literally had to stop her probably 20 times and go, "Repeat that in language that we can all understand and speak slowly." And so finally, the next call that we didn't get anything accomplished, that first call, because Kurt came and he would hit the mute and go, you know, Kurt, because so we finally engaged a firm, Goodwin Mills and Kaywood, and they had everything we needed. They had spreadsheets. They had the lingo. They had 2 guys dedicated to FEMA projects, and so we ended up paying $2,000 to them that we're going to receive $98,000 from tornado fund relief. So, talking about dealing with government, you almost these days have to go to a you know, the expert is somebody from out of town with a briefcase, the consultant, and so you almost have to go with a consultant to wade through the verbiage from the federal government. And I gave you the final rule on the ARPA fund,
About that thick.
and it's literally about 3 inches thick to tell you how to spend those funds. So that's one of the reasons why we've all been in a state of paralysis over, yeah, we got that money, but we're scared to spend it.
You got to be careful, don't you?
Yeah, we got, well, and we really want it to be not spend it. We want it to be an investment, and not just a careless. That sounds good. Let's do it. You know what is gonna be good for the long-term stability of Centreville and its citizens, and how can we do that in a responsible way and not be penalized for doing that by the federal government, which I guarantee they oh, here it's free money. Nothing's free. And so we're really just kind of waiting to see. And we've got until 2024 to spend it. So you could literally hold that money in an interest-bearing account if you really wanted to, and you got 2 more years to spend it.
Well, we're getting a lot of good information. Thank you for coming in and telling us, because I didn't know some of the things you were saying. I was aware, I just not heard it articulated as well as you just did, that you do need an interpreter sometimes.
Oh my goodness.
To work between you and the federal government, because the languages are not the same.
Not the same.
And the purposes and the needs are not the same. Yet we're tied to having to do the things that the federal government mandates in order to use the funds that come.
Well, when you read that final rule, you'll see that one paragraph tells you something about, and the first rule for the American Rescue Plan funding was that you can only spend it on COVID-related things, water and sewer infrastructure, or broadband, which are 3 broad things. Every city that has a water system has that is the age of ours, has needs and wants. And broadband is such a broad term. Well, y'all know, y'all dealing with local being invested in broadband companies, and we've got a great one here, Alabama Lightwave. But you know, there's so many needs, and how much money can you just spend on? Let's say let's run these funds. Let's use these funds just for broadband. Well, how far would that go? How far would $309,000 go? You know, for broadband, versus how far would it go for water and sewer infrastructure that we know is going to be needing repairs. In fact, we've got one under right across from Alabama Power Company now that we got a 10-inch PVC pipe that sinks into a 6-inch galvanized pipe. This is sewer, and it's not a pretty business. And then it goes about 10 or 12 feet in a windy fashion. Then it goes back to a 10-inch pipe. Well, that's cause that we found out, and we had to engage a company that runs a camera down through there. And I've seen it. It's actually fascinating in a weird way. But you can actually see where the old pipe had roots have grown into it. You can see breakages in pipes, and it has the exact feet and inches, so you know exactly where it is, and you drill down and replace that section of pipe. So, but just the camera, $9,000 to run it 448 feet. So
well, I don't have time, and I don't take time to tell you about a time domain reflectometer.
Oh yeah.
But I learned what that was back in the cable TV days, and
but the bottom line,
tell you right where the break was, exactly how many feet it was.
But the bottom line is, we really want to make an investment and not just spend the money carelessly, which we're not going to do. But there's so many unknowns. And the other day, in that final ruling, and there are so many different interpretations. One city said you put it in your general fund. Well, you don't ever mix federal money. with state money or city money. You know, you get that mixed up, and then your accountant comes in and says, well, you know, what did you do here? And you know, so we've had our accountant come in. He just finished with an audit yesterday,
Really?
and he was really knowledgeable about money and different pots of money.
Yeah.
Don
Yeah.
Wallace, and he's been vital in saying, yeah, do this, don't do this, you know, because you will be penalized. And so we've got a reserve of $309,000 right now, waiting on another one to come, you know, in a few months. And in the meantime, we have met, and we're so new in the process that our city council hadn't even seriously discussed how do we need to spend this, because as y'all know, y'all have been involved in city government, municipal government. There's so many unknowns and so many things that the average person doesn't have or isn't privy to the information at that point, and that's where communication comes into play. And you let people know, like, this is why we're spending that, and this is the long-term result in us doing this investment, as opposed to, hey, let's put up a splash park, which I want to do, you know, splash pad.
Yeah.
You know, I want to do that. You know, that's a quick thing that'll, hey, will it help enhance our community?
Make some people happy.
Oh, yes, it will, and it'll draw people in. And we've got a great quality of life here, world-class ballpark that people from all over the state play in, the Cahaba River, which we're all proud of, and I live on the river, and every weekend morning in the summer, you can be awoken to the voices of children playing in the river on inner tubes and kayaks, which is really cool. And we got as we know, we've got a world-class hospital and Cahaba Medical Center and Bibb Medical Center.
No question.
You know, so
No
we
question.
and everywhere we go, y'all, people ask me, how does y'all's hospital do that? It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it is. We live in a great place.
We do.
You basically have covered a lot of the questions here already and given some of the answers, but I'm gonna run through them just
Yes,
to
sir.
repeat them, because I want to give everybody the same questions so that everybody at home for their community will have the same answers or the same questions asked. So you've covered a lot. Well, I'm gonna ask you one question, Mike, but you've covered several. Second question was, has your community already spent or allocated money from any of the above funds? If so, please tell us how it was used and if the expenditure was approved by your council or commission.
One of the things we did, it was a year ago, and it was COVID relief funds when COVID really impacted the workforce, and it impacted, I think, every single one of our employees. And we've got like 27 employees, and it literally impacted every one of them. You know, at one point right before Christmas last year, we had to close the office for 10 days because of contacting the guidance from state, you know, health and all. So COVID relief funds enabled us to make sure that no employees missed a paycheck, and that the ones that had to fill in for the ones that were missing, we had several overtime. You know, as you know, in a small police force, you can't just not cover part of the city. And Rodney Smith, our chief, has done a great job of juggling, scheduling. You know, when one was sick, another one would come in and cover. So we had some overtime, and thank goodness the COVID relief funds helped us allocate money for overtime and time missed for employees.
Well, isn't that same fund that a lot of businesses also got?
If you could apply for,
There were a lot of businesses in town too
Yes,
that I'm
they
sure
did.
got that
they
same money.
did. If you had, and it was based on the number of employees, the amount of money you got.
Well, the third question here, I think
And you wouldn't believe
you've already
you wouldn't
answered.
believe the documentation we had to do for that too.
I probably would.
Businesses were supposed to, I hope they did, but I mean, it was amazing because Megan's done a stellar job of, I mean, literally every single penny had to be, because they'll call and go, did you document this? What was this? And she'll go, this fund, this check number. And so we've been pretty good so far as fending off the intrusive state and federal government.
Well, you got to be smart.
heavy hand.
You got to be smarter. They'll come back and say
They
you
will.
got to pay it back.
They will.
Well, my third question, and I think you've already answered it, is can you tell our readers how much money from any of the above funds is currently remaining and if any of those funds are already allocated, and I think you said about 309,000.
We'll get another 309.
You get another 309, and you're not going to do anything with it until you've got clarity from the powers that be as to how you can spend it and what.
And you know they're doing it. They're doing a. In fact, there was a good story in here about Governor Kenny Ivey.
Where was it at?
It was in here. It was in this paper, and it talked about that her charge to the legislature.
A little shameless promotion.
Yeah,
there.
well, a little shameless plug. You know, be sure to buy the Centreville Press and support your hometown business. One of the oldest businesses in the county. And but it was a great story about Governor Ivey as director of the legislature, and they're doing a special session on how to.
That's right.
You know how to, and you know that she wanted it to, like I said, to be an investment, long-term benefits, not just a quick fix or a Band-Aid. And so, you know, we're really, and one good thing we've got April Weaver, our state senator.
Yeah.
Russell Bedsoe,
Yep.
and Ralph Howard now.
Yep.
Because the way they redistricted, Ralph's district now comes to the Cobble River. And so he's got a chunk of Centreville and Brent, all of Brent, some of Centreville. And they've all been very responsive when we've called and said, you know, help us get clarification, tell us what we need to do, and here's what we'd like you to pass forward. And so they've all been very responsive. I guess I get a call from April and Russell, especially, probably twice a week. And Councilman Mack is in touch with Ralph Howard because they're on a couple of committees together. And so we just want to make sure that we're one of the cities that it's easy to get day to day to get complacent in just doing the everyday things. But the cities and the municipalities that profit are the ones that keep close ties with their elected officials and find out what's going on before it happens, because you don't want to be one of those that says, oh, you didn't apply for those. Why didn't you apply for that block grant? Or, you know, and you go, I didn't know about it because, you know, just for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Also, the West Alabama Planning Commission has been instrumental in helping us as far as like guidance with funding, what to do, what not to do. And they're also the area center on aging. And we've got I can't remember the demographics of our population, but you know, we really, splash pad, let me go back to that. Great for young kids and families, phenomenal. What can we do for the people that have made this place their forever home, and what can we do to enhance their quality of life? And that's the ones that are my age and older. And so, you know, you've always got to keep that in mind, because the worst thing, we've all been there, we've had to care for an aging parent or a relative. You know, you want to make sure that the community they're in is doing all they can to help you help them. So those are some of the things that we're brainstorming about the American Rescue Fund. We're glad to have them. There's some communities, David, that have turned it down because of the fear of federal ties, and that is an intrusion on the old saw of states' rights. That if the federal government gives you money, they will expect something. You know, one great example is the feeding program in public schools. You know, it's a huge moneymaker for schools.
Yeah.
Should we be in the business of feeding kids, or if they come to school hungry, should you turn them into DHR? You know, there's an ongoing argument. So, you know, one of the things we want to do is protect against the heavy hand of bureaucratic government. We want to be responsible in how we spend any of the money, and also make sure that we're responsible in the end, because the buck stops with me regardless.
It does.
You know, good, bad, or ugly. And I sure don't look good in stripes. And that orange is not my color wheel. And jumpsuit. And so I want to make darn sure that none of us, you know, get in trouble or misallocate any funds that could have gone to help one person in our community.
Well, it'd be a lot harder to get in touch with you.
It sure would be.
Well,
you would know where I'd be.
I wouldn't be able to call you up and get you to come over for an interview.
No, you would not.
Okay. I got one more question, and I think that's going to wind it up on the COVID funds, and that is, will you seek from the public as to what the public wishes may be for how the above funds could be used?
I think to a certain point, you know, but the public at large, I don't think, like anybody that gets into a situation, doesn't know the needs of water and sewer, but that's up to us to explain, that need. They don't, and the public at large loves the idea of broadband, but has no really relative idea of how can we get broadband from here to Randolph? How can we get it to Law? How can we get it to Woodstock? And there are people that know that, and Lambert is one of the guys that can do that. And then how do you facilitate that, and how do you get the partnerships that you need in place to make that happen? I'll give you a good example of money, how money can change the world. Orange Beach, destination, millions of dollars in tourism throughout the year, but their yearly population, when the tourists and all leave, isn't much bigger than us. They're using all of their art money to electrify their neighborhoods, to give broadband to everybody that lives in Orange Beach. They're a small island, and Orange Beach got a pretty good bit of money.
Yeah.
But they've got money to add to it. So they're gonna make broadband available to everybody, which is really my goal. I think we've talked about Chattanooga probably 10 years ago. They had a young group come in to city government. They had a young, innovative mayor come in, and they said, how can we best position ourselves for the future? And one of the things that Chattanooga, and we all struggle with, is the brain drain. How can we keep our best and brightest? Well, one of the guys said, tell you what we need to do. If we could offer free internet, back then it was, free broadband, millennials would move here. And so they tossed the idea around. They thought, let's do that. Well, the next thing that happened was it became a haven for millennials. Not only for that, they live there. They electrified they've got their police cars are electric vehicles. They've got the little scooters and the electric bikes, all around the city. And Chattanooga is not a huge city. It's a neat city. But and hotels moved in, businesses started coming back. The streets became cleaner. They got a better hospital. That all became possible through broadband. Just saying, let's make broadband available in Chattanooga. And so that all happened. So that's one of the things that we look at and go, we really need to invest in broadband. How do we do it without how can we do that and have money left over to do things that we need otherwise? How can we do that? Because here we are in Centreville, we've got a great broadband company, and we can help it. And one of the things struggling with broadband is you need money to start. You need money to whether it's fiber optic or whether you have your sensors and the relays and all. So we're really talking about that. Of course, when you get to that level, you need younger people to bounce the ideas off of. It's like having a cell phone and handing it to your 6-year-old grandson and say, fix this, and they hand it back and say, here, Pop, it's fixed.
They fix it, yeah.
So we're really we're convincing around the ideas of how can we help broadband, how can we help our water and sewer infrastructure, and we've kind of got the COVID relief funds fixed. So we're kind of good on that.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming and meeting with the Centreville Press today in a video format.
It's a special place for me.
Well, I kind of thought you felt kind of home here.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's understandable. I would like to take one moment before we close to speak to the readers of the Centreville Press. We've had some feedback about our policy change where we're charging for obituaries. And I want to let the readers know that we still are doing the things that we've always done, and that is that if you have a death in the community, we do a death announcement in the Centreville Press at no charge. But I don't know of any other paper in the world that does free obituaries, because obituaries are something that somebody can write whatever they want, put how many pictures
it's a life
they
story.
want. And it could be a short obituary or a long obituary. Well, it takes space in the paper for that to occur. So we've decided to start charging for obituaries. And I think we've made the right decision, but I want folks to know that we're not cutting off the requirement or the tradition of doing death announcements. Death announcements will always and are now and still free in the Centreville Press. But we've got to move on into the future, and we're going to have to do that. I wish we could give everything away, but that's just not the nature of business, is it?
Are you paying less for anything now?
I can't think of a thing that costs less. Water's even going up, I imagine. Well, I appreciate the time. I appreciate Mayor Oakley being with us. Appreciate the readers of the Centreville Press. And I hope you enjoy the new digital things that we're moving into. We're trying to move into the future along with this community, move it into the future. So thank you for being with us, Mayor Oakley.
David, I hope this goes a long way to, one of my goals was to get people excited about living here and passionate about making this their home. And also, along those lines of cleaning up, we want to hold people to a higher standard that when you live in Centreville, you should be proud of being a Centreville native. And you should take that message out and go, this is what we do. Well, that ties into clean your yard up. If you have a place, if you have an old house, fix it up, sell it, or donate it to the city.
Sure.
If you have trash, don't throw it on the roadways.
There's a place
We've
for
got
it.
Receptacles all over this town and all over the area. So, and that's a reflection on how you were raised too. So you don't want to, we all know that you do not want to bring shame on your mommy or your daddy.
Well, I'll mention one more thing since you've done that, Mike. There are some significant news issues and news things that are coming in regard to our medical community here in Bibb County. The Wellness Center, I think they're calling it, or the Health and Wellness Center. That's going to be a big thing in our community. And I just want people to take note that it's going to change the livability and the things that our community has to offer significantly. So stay tuned. We're going to be covering that a little bit more in the Centreville Press.
Hey, one thing I forgot to even mention when you talked about that is that we entered into about a year ago, Joseph Marchant and I were at Chamber of Commerce coffee that they do a really good job of featuring businesses and having people around the area come and meet and greet, and you meet people that you don't necessarily run into every day. Anyway, Joseph, they're redoing their emergency room, the back of the hospital, and their EMS facilities. And so, we just bitched around like, where could we base out of? And I said, we got a phenomenal fire department that's really underutilized except on sporadic fire calls.
Yeah.
So we went down there, had a group that went down there, walked through it. It really needed cleaning, not updating, because the structure is really good. It needed fixing up. So they have committed to going in there, and our firefighters too have gone in there. You wouldn't believe it. Cleaned it up. I would encourage everybody to stop by our fire department. Give us a call at City Hall. I'll meet you down there. You'll see how clean it is. We take pride in the things that we own, and the ambulances now have a place. And that thing was built with the idea that in the future there may be a full-time fire department that could cover Brent Centreville or South Bibb. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's got bunk rooms. It's got showers for men and women. It's got a kitchen. It's got everything you need to have that. And it was a perfect fit for EMS to go out of our first responder facility. And it's been a really neat, I guess, public-private partnership, or public or private, whatever. But anyway, we're really, really proud to partner with our hospital and Joseph Marchant, who is a very talented CEO.
No question.
I'm glad we have him here, and to run our ambulance services out of there. And so far, they've been very happy. And everything's been up and up. So anytime you enter something like that turns out to be a success, you got to be happy.
Another example of folks in our community working together to make the community better.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you, and I have stopped by. I did see it, and I know what you're talking about.
Deal.
I've seen it with my own eyes. It's great, and we've got a lot of volunteers in this community, and different fire departments around too. That I really appreciate the first responders. No question about it. Our communities are much stronger when you've got a strong fire department and first responder resource.
David, they're going part of that fixing up is going to be the end room is really a big classroom, and they've already ordered. In fact, the furniture's coming in. Chairs came in the other day. We're going to make that end room a place where you can rent it. You can use it for public meetings. It's going to have internet capability and the big screen drop down. Yeah. And we're going to have EMT classes, CPR classes, first responder training, and public use too. So hopefully that's going to be something we'll get you in on pretty quick.
You kind of talk like a fellow that's been in the PR business.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Y'all talk to him.